What should the United States do about slavery? By the middle of the 19th century, that was the nation's most bitterly unresolved question. The rural South relied on black slaves to farm tobacco and cotton to sustain its very way of life. Other Americans sought to keep slavery from spreading to new states or to outlaw it altogether. The quarrel reached the breaking point when Abraham Lincoln, candidate of the anti-slavery Republican Party, was elected president in November 1860. Beginning with South Carolina in December 11th, southern states seceded from the U.S. federal government, called the Union, and declared themselves an independent country. The question then was, would that split lead to the Civil War? Taking office in March 1861, Lincoln sought to avert war by appealing to the Confederacy. I have no purpose to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists, he said in his inaugural address. But when war came, Lincoln found that he would have to interfere. He did it with a historic document called the Emancipation Proclamation. On April 12, 1861, Confederate forces attacked Union forces at Fort Sumter, South Carolina, igniting the Civil War.
Mr. Cameron, what's the latest news from Fort Monroe in Virginia?
Mr. President, about 850 escaped slaves have sought protection at the fort.
In fact, thousands of escaped slaves have fled to our lines, looking for freedom.
Congress urges daily over whether or not this war is being fought to end slavery.
I believe that if slavery is not wrong, nothing is. But my primary concern is keeping the Union together. If I insist on freeing slaves, the border states could leave the Union and join the Confederacy. The border states are Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware. Although slavery is legal there, these states have remained in the Union, so far. We need every advantage in fighting this terrible war. I hope to have God on my side, but I must have Kentucky.
The first year of the war goes badly for the Union Army. The Confederate forces of General Robert E. Lee make bold advances into Maryland. President Lincoln is assailed by critics from all sides. In January 1862, a leading abolitionist speaks before an overthrown crowd in New York City.
This war must destroy slavery and create a new nation that knows neither black nor white. Mr. Lincoln will not take the lead to end this great scourge.
Phillips meets with fellow abolitionist Frederick Douglass.
But the border states refuse, as one congressman says, to accept the liberation of a single slave.
By the summer of 1862, Union General George McClellan's failure to defeat the Confederate Army has become worrisome. In Washington, one observer calls the 4th of July holiday the gloomiest since the birth of the Republic. Massachusetts Senator Charles Sumner, a prominent abolitionist, calls on Lincoln at the White House.
Mr. President, I urge you to commemorate this Independence Day by proclaiming that all slaves are free.
Sir, I would do so if I weren't afraid that half the army would lay down their arms and other states would join the rebellion.
On the contrary, such an action could inspire your army and rally the country behind you.
What would inspire us right now would be some solid victories on the battlefield. On July 12th, Lincoln meets with a group of border states congressmen and again pleads his case for gradual emancipation. If you had agreed to my plan this spring, the war would be almost won by now. I beg you to act and quickly, but when the congressmen get together later.
What an insult. So the president thinks that we, the loyal states, should be punished while the rebels keep their slaves. Let him stick to his constitutional authority and fight this war for the proper reason.
Rejection by the border states is the last straw. It leads him to make a momentous decision. In late July, he calls his cabinet together, takes 2 pieces of paper from his pocket, and begins to read.
I hereby proclaim that on the first day of January 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or part of any state, where the people are in rebellion against the United States, shall then, thenceforth, and forever be free.
When he finishes reading, there is stunned silence. Because the decree would free all the South slaves at once, not gradually, it is bolder than anything Lincoln has proposed before. Finally, the Secretary of War speaks.
Mr. President, you must issue this decree at once. It strikes at one of the South's most valuable resources and will sap the strength of rebellion.
Yet I worry that it will cost the Republicans votes in the fall election.
Mr. Seward, you've been quiet. What do you think?
You should know that I am approved of the proclamation, but I'm worried about its timing. Our recent losses have been so bad the public may see this as a desperate moment. Let's wait until the eagle of the victory takes flight. We can hang our proclamation around its neck.
Wise counsel, Mr. Seward. Very well. We must keep this matter to ourselves for now. Yellow.
For months, word from the battlefront remains grim. Then, on September 17th, General McClellan turns back the Confederate invasion of Maryland at the bloody Battle of Antietam Creek. A few days later, Lincoln again reassembles his cabinet.
My mind has been much occupied with the subject of the Emancipation. With Lee's army driven out of Maryland, I think it has time to come.
The preliminary Emancipation Proclamation is published, stirring celebrations throughout northern cities. In Boston, Frederick Douglass gathers with his friends. I can hardly believe I have lived to see this righteous decree.
But the proclamation frees only the slaves in the rebellious states because we can't enforce it. It's meaningless. I disagree. Already the decree is encouraging slaves to escape in greater numbers. Many of them are volunteering to fight.
Proclamation also has a powerful symbolic effect. Finally, the war has a moral cause, to end slavery. It is the first chapter in the new national history. Months pass. On New Year's Day, Lincoln spends hours greeting well-wishers at the White House. In late afternoon, he sits down and prepares to sign the final Emancipation Proclamation.
I have never, in my life, felt more certain that I was doing right than I do in signing this paper. If my name ever goes into history, it'll be for this act, and my soul is in it.
The Civil War would last another 2.5 years, finally ending in June 1865. When the Emancipation Proclamation first took effect, it couldn't be enforced in most of the South. It also didn't apply to the border states. But the proclamation still had an enormous impact. By giving Southern slaves hope of freedom, it helped undercut the South's labor force. It also inspired thousands of border state slaves to join the Union Army, especially when Lincoln promised them immediate freedom for enlisting. Most important, the Emancipation Proclamation laid the foundation for the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which abolished slavery for good in December 1865. As a friend of Charles Summers wrote to him, in such a proclamation, words became things and powerful things too. Slave to farm its tobacco and cotton, to sustain its very way of life. Other American...
It's hilarious.
My phone for how did I talk to you?
Oh my gosh.